I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. As this is the first time that I am addressing the Security Council in the new year, let me congratulate the 5 new council members on their election. I wish you the best of luck in navigating the sometimes stormy debates of this hall. As we gather in this chamber, an alarm bell is ringing. Never has it been so clear that Iran is seeking to build a nuclear weapon. This is the single greatest threat to the security of the entire world. Now is the time to act. Tomorrow is too late. The stakes are too high. The price of inaction is too great. The latest IAEA reports prove beyond any doubt that Iran has a nuclear weapons program and is advancing rapidly. Iran recently announced that it will enrich uranium at a 20% level at its nuclear facility in Qom. There is no plausible civilian justification for this action. It blatantly violates numerous resolutions of this Council and will bring Iran significantly closer to producing weapon-grade, highly enriched uranium. Each and every member of the United Nations, and particularly this Council, should lie awake at night thinking about what would happen if the regime in Iran gets a hold of the most dangerous weapon on the community, can stop Iran from continuing its march towards nuclear weapons. The political and economic price that Iran will pay must be clear. Israel commends the recent steps taken by the US, the EU, and others in this regard. Although these are important steps, very important steps, we must judge them based on their results. It is time for the rest of the international community and this Council to join these efforts. Mr. President, we come together today after a year of turmoil in the Middle East. Great challenges stand on the horizon. People are demanding dignity and seeking liberty after generations of oppression. Extremism threatens fragile societies. Human rights continue to be trampled. Unrest has shaken the foundations of the political order from the Straits of Gibraltar to the Gulf to the Caspian Sea. And what issue has this Council deemed to be the most pressing in its monthly debate on the Middle East? Surprise, surprise, the status of municipal building applications in the West Bank. In the last 2 monthly briefings of this Secretariat, barely a square inch of Jerusalem or the West Bank has been left unexamined. Yet entire Middle East countries where people are being killed, repressed, and tortured daily continue to go without mention. This is logic turned on its head. Let me be clear. Perfectly clear. Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is important on its own merits, so that Israelis and Palestinians alike can lead peaceful, secure, and prosperous lives. But the misallocation of the Security Council's time, energy, and resources erodes its credibility. How many times have these members of this Council and many others repeated the statement, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the central conflict in the Middle East? You solve that conflict, you solve all the other conflicts in the region. Today, one would ridicule that statement. It's obvious that Yemen, Syria, Egypt, Bahrain, and other conflicts in the Middle East have nothing to do with Israel. The constant repetition of a statement doesn't make it true. How many times have members of this Council and many others repeated settlements are the primary obstacle to peace? The repetition of the statement also does not make it true. The primary obstacle to peace is not settlements. The primary obstacle to peace is a so-called claim of return. Let me repeat that. The major hurdle to peace is the Palestinians' insistence on the so-called claim of return. You will never hear Palestinian leaders, not even here in this Council, say 2 states for 2 people. If you ever hear them say 2 states for 2 people, please phone me in my office immediately. Call such an unprecedented occurrence. You won't hear them say 2 states for 2 people because today the Palestinian leadership is calling for an independent Palestinian state but insists that its people return to the Jewish state. This would mean the destruction of Israel. The idea that Israel will be flooded with millions of Palestinians will never be accepted. The international community knows it, the Palestinian leadership knows it, but the Palestinian people aren't hearing it. To substantiate that, in a poll conducted by the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion last November, 90%, and I repeat, 90% of the Palestinians said that they would not give up the claim of return. This gap between their perception and reality is and will remain the major obstacle to peace. Since the Palestinian leadership refuses to tell the Palestinian people the truth, the international community has the responsibility to tell them the truth. You have a responsibility to stand up and say that the so-called claim of return is a non-starter. Yet many around this table, who never miss an opportunity to tell Israel what it has to do for peace, conveniently lose their voices when it comes to tell the Palestinian people about the basic compromises they will have to make for peace. Mr. President, Palestinian refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state goes hand in hand with a culture of incitement in mosques, in schools, and in the media. Day after day, children are taught to pursue violence and to hate, vilify, and dehumanize Israelis and Jews. Let me be clear, I'm not only talking about Hamas in Gaza, but also about the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, where you can't turn a corner without seeing terrorists and terrorism glorified. This month, on January 9th, it was mentioned by Oscar Fernandez Taranco, but I will go a bit into that because it was mentioned by passing. This month, on January 9th, Palestinian Authority Television broadcast the proceeding of an event that's celebrating Fatah's 47th anniversary. It featured a sermon by the PA's most senior religious leader, Mufti Muhammad Hussein, who presented the killing of Jews as a sacred goal for all Muslims. His comments were deeply disturbing, but what was even more disturbing for me is that no one from the Palestinian leadership stood up and condemned his comments, denounced his actions, or disassociated themselves from this message. Not only that, they even broadcasted his words on public Palestinian TV channels. Palestinian leadership said nothing, and their silence speaks volumes. Mr. President, the path to peace is clear. The international community must tell the Palestinians unequivocally that unilateralism is a dead end, and that direct negotiations are the only way forward. Recent talks in Amman are a positive step in this regard, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank King Abdallah and everyone else for helping to facilitate these meetings. Now Israelis and Palestinians must take the next step towards peace together. It's time to stop negotiating about negotiating. It's time to stop meeting about meeting. It's time to stop talking about talking. Yet instead of taking steps towards peace with Israel, President Abbas continues to flirt with dangers of unity with Hamas. Now, Hamas also wasn't mentioned here. Hamas is a terrorist organization funded and supported and trained by the Iranian regime. It has diverted nearly every resource in Gaza to oppressing its own people or attacking ours. Women are subjugated, political opponents are jailed and murdered, and children are suicide bombers. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the reality on the ground in Gaza. Today, as we speak, yet we did not hear one word or a syllable about it in today's briefing. The Quartet has long applied three principles that Hamas must adopt to become a legitimate actor in the peace process. It must renounce violence, recognize Israel, and abide by prior Palestinian agreements. The bar could not be set any lower. Yet at no point has Hamas satisfied these conditions or indicated any intention to do so. It says no to negotiation, it says no to recognition of Israel, and it continues to carry out violence against Israel day after day. Any who suggest that Hamas is a partner for peace should take a trip to the Gaza Strip. The area remains alone boldly and immediately. Yet this Council says it has not found the time or the will to utter a single syllable of condemnation against these attacks, and the silence is deafening. No people should be expected to live under such terror. No government should be expected to stand idle in the face of such violence. Later this month, the Secretary General will visit Israel and see the threats we face with his own eyes. Let's hope that this trip brings a bit of new perspective to this organization about the real obstacle to peace and security, and the real issues of extremism, terrorism, and incitement in our region. Mr. President, the challenges facing the Middle East are growing every day. They stand clearly before this Council. They threaten all of us, and it is on your shoulders to confront them with courage and with leadership. Tired rhetoric and misplaced focus has too often characterized this debate. It will no longer suffice. As Iran inches closer to a nuclear weapon, as extremists spread terrorism and hate, and as enemies of peace test the resolve of the international community, silence is not an option. Conflict will not be easy. It will require struggle and sacrifice. As Winston Churchill once said, we must be united, we must be undaunted, we must be inflexible at this critical moment. For the sake of our children and our common future, the world has no other choice. Thank you very, very much.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement.